In the quest to grow the sorghum industry in South Africa, we have to look not just forwards, but also back to our roots. Sorghum as an ancient grain has huge nutritional and cultural value, but it's something we might need to remind Umzansi of. And someone who's doing just that is Spamandla Manqele from Local Village Africa. Spamandla, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Firstly, tell us a little bit about what Local Village Africa is and what you do.
So we are African Whole Fruits Company. We work with small-scale farmers mainly from all over the continent, and we source these inputs and we create value-added products, and then we take it to health-conscious customers.
So you're creating those market opportunities between farmers and the market where there's a huge demand for healthy, nutritious and traditional indigenous foods.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about the uses for sorghum in traditional food in Africa.
So I grew up in the Eastern Cape in Lusikisiki, and we would use sorghum as amabele, as a porridge. In most parts, people use it for beer. They make traditional beer for events, and it's a product that is used to celebrate life, to celebrate events. And in some parts, I've heard, like Northwest, they do a fermented porridge, and that it plugs into their main course in that fashion.
So we know there's huge nutritional value. It's a crop that is easier to grow in terms of climate. So there's a lot of potential for the sorghum industry. But in your opinion, how would economic development look in South Africa with sorghum as a vehicle?
I think that's such an important question, because South Africa, with so much inequality that exists, we see a lot of people migrating into city looking for better work, but also we're seeing so much poverty in rural communities. I find that if sorghum perhaps could be strategically positioned to be a crop that through policy, through various infrastructure supports, through seeds and offtake agreements, would definitely see people in rural communities who would get to farm this product as something that would contribute to the development of the economy. South Africa currently is not consuming a lot of sorghum in compared to some of its competing commodities, but I definitely feel, not just because of health reasons, but just the positioning of it around drought resistant and climate change. It's one of the crops that can actually stand, and so it would be a strategic product to look at and promote and use.
Working with small-scale and cooperative farmers, what are some of the challenges that you've come across with farming with sorghum?
Specifically in South Africa, small-scale farmers, they don't farm it quite a lot in compared to maize, for example. You find it a lot in Malawi, where small-scale farmers are actually farming it. In South Africa, they tell us about the yield they get per hectare, so that's not encouraging them to farm, but also just offtake agreements. Specifically, say for example, if government were a procurer of this and use it in hospitals and various places, it would encourage people to actually grow, because they would know that they have a market. So I think for us as a business, often we find it difficult, specifically on sorghum, to get from really small scale farmers because of some of the support that doesn't exist. That's not there for them, and often it's difficult for small scale farmers to produce it.
Talk to us about the importance of sorghum and making a compelling case for its role on our plates.
So two things. One, sorghum is an indigenous crop in South Africa. It is part of the identity of her people. So if you go to the US or Europe and you ask what is African indigenous products, you can't make a claim that it's maize. Sorghum has to be that grain that we share and we celebrate, because it contributes to the identity of an African people. So if people use this as a beer, if they use it in porridge or pap, that's part of their heritage, and so it's so important for the dignity of its people. That's one. But also, I think I mentioned earlier that sorghum is one of the products that is great from a climate change point of view. So whether we've got floods or whether we've got drought, it's a crop that can actually stand. So as we look at climate change, I think it's a very important grain that could be strategically positioned for us to farm, but also to consume.
Ticks all the boxes, doesn't it?
It does.
Ancient grain, traditional values, cultural values, and yet it also appeals to that health-conscious market that are looking to buy products in, retail stores on the higher end, where they can, feel that they're eating things that are healthy, that have been produced in a sustainable way. So we're looking forward to everything that sorghum offers this year.
For sure.
Thanks so much, Spamandla.
Thank you for having me.